The sun shone on Ajose Street, bright and warm after many rainy days. A big moving truck stopped in front of a large, old house. It had been empty for many years. Now, a new family was moving in. Mr. Adeyemi stepped out of the truck first, filled with excitement. He looked at the house with pride. After 20 years of working hard and studying, he had finally bought a home for his family. His wife, Bola, stepped out next. She smiled, but something about the house made her feel strange inside. The house, though very beautiful, she still felt a cold chill by just staring at it. Just while she was staring, she felt a cold hand brush her hair to the side. Her eyes met the one of her husband. She immediately smiled to hide her displeasure. She didn't want him to feel sad about anything. He had gone through a lot to make the moment possible for them. Their children were excited. Tolu, 15, ran into the house. "This place is huge. I want the room with the balcony." Kimi, 8, spun in the hallway. "It's like a palace, Mummy." Anu, 17, felt a little afraid but didn't say anything. She smiled and walked away to look around. The last thing she would want to do was let anyone notice her fears. The house was big, but very old. Some rooms were dark. The floors creaked. Dust floated in the air. It felt quiet. Too quiet. The first night in the new house was quiet. Too quiet. Everyone had gone to bed early. The long day of unpacking had made them tired. Mr. Adeyemi fell asleep quickly. The children were in their new rooms, surrounded by boxes and excitement. But Bola could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark, but something didn't feel right. Her skin felt cold, even though the air was warm. She pulled her wrapper tighter around her shoulders and sat up. Suddenly, she heard a sound, creak. It was soft, like a footstep on an old wooden floor. Bola held her breath and listened. Another sound, creak. Then silence. She slowly got out of bed and opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, lit only by the dim light from a street lamp outside. Shadows danced on the walls. She walked a few steps into the hallway. Whispers. Faint, soft whispers. Too quiet to understand, but they were there, like someone was talking far away, or very close. "Hello." Bola called out softly. "Tolu." "Anu." "Kimi." No one answered. She walked toward the stairs. A sudden breeze brushed her cheek, cold and sharp. She stopped. The air should not feel that cold. It was a hot night. She looked around. "Did someone leave a window open?" she asked, her voice low. In the living room downstairs, she found Mr. Adeyemi putting away some papers. "No," he said, shaking his head. "All the windows are shut. These old houses just creak and groan. Don't worry, Bola. We'll get used to it." But Bola wasn't sure. As she walked back upstairs, the cold breeze passed her again, just for a second, like something had rushed by. She looked over her shoulder. Nothing. Her heart beat faster, but she tried to stay calm. "Maybe I'm just tired," she thought. "Maybe I just need sleep." She returned to bed, but her eyes stayed open in the dark. Every creak, every whisper, every shadow made her heart beat faster. Down the hall, the old grandfather clock stood still, its hands frozen, its face covered in dust. It hadn't ticked in years. But as the night went on, Bola could have sworn she heard it ticking. Tick, tick, tick. The next few days in the house on Ajose Street were busy. The family tried to settle in. Boxes were opened, curtains were hung, and rooms slowly became more comfortable. But Bola still felt uneasy. She moved around the house during the day, cleaning and unpacking, but she never felt alone. It was as if someone, or something, was always watching from the corners. One afternoon, Bola was in the kitchen cooking egusi soup. The smell of ground melon seeds and palm oil filled the air. The pot on the stove bubbled gently. She hummed a soft tune and stirred slowly. Then she heard it. Tap, Tap, tap. She stopped stirring. The sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. It was soft, like fingernails tapping on wood. It wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from the hallway. Bola turned off the stove and walked to the doorway. She looked down the hall. Empty. No movement. No sound. She waited for a moment, listening. Silence. She shook her head. Maybe the wood is settling, she whispered to herself. It's an old house. She went back to her cooking, but the feeling didn't leave. Later that day, when the children were at school and Mr. Adeyemi was at work, the house felt even more still. Bola walked through the hallway with a basket of laundry in her arms. She passed the same spot where she had heard the tapping. Then she heard it again. This time, it wasn't tapping. It was laughter. A soft, high-pitched laugh, like a small child playing. Bola stopped walking. The hair on her arm stood up. It was strange laughter. Not joyful. Not sweet. It sounded distant, echoing, like it didn't belong in this world. She called out, "Tolu." No answer. Kimi. Silence. She walked toward the sound, heart beating fast. As she stepped into the living room, the laughter stopped, suddenly, like someone had turned off a radio. She looked around. Nothing moved. Her eyes fell on the grandfather clock. It still wasn't working. The hands were stuck at 3:17. But Bola could hear something. Tick, tick, tick. The sound was back, even though the clock was broken. When Bola told Tolu about the spirits in the house, her daughter laughed it off. Ghosts? Mum, this isn't a Nollywood movie, she scoffed, rolling her eyes. Bola didn't argue. She just gave a small, tired smile, the kind that says you'll see. That night, Tolu was in her room, revising for her final exams. The only sound was the low hum of her fan and the occasional rustle of her notebook pages. Outside, the night was unusually still. Then the fan spun faster without warning, like it had caught a gust of wind. It whirred furiously for 3 seconds, then stopped dead. Silence. Heavy, unnatural silence. Tolu frowned, looking up. That's when she heard it. A faint scratching. Scritch. Scritch. Like nails on wood. It came from the far corner of the room and slowly moved up the wall, across the ceiling, deliberate and slow, like something crawling. It reached the ceiling above her, then began descending down the wall behind her bedframe. Tolu froze. Her spine stiffened as the sound got closer. Then something cold touched her cheek. Not a breeze. Not air. A hand. She screamed and leapt out of bed, flipping on the light. The room looked normal. Empty. But then she saw them, fresh, jagged scratch marks running along the wall above her headboard, as if something had been clawing its way toward her. She didn't sleep that night. She didn't sleep the next night either. Or the one after that. Kimi, her younger sister, had always loved her room. It was airy, painted in soft pastels, with delicate curtains and old wooden furniture. But her favorite piece was the vintage vanity mirror, oval-shaped, with a gold frame and fine floral carvings. She felt like a princess when she sat there, brushing her hair. But that changed one night. She was humming to herself, gently brushing her curls before bed. Then something in the reflection caught her eye. Behind her, just over her shoulder, stood a woman. Still, pale skin, sunken, sorrowful eyes, hair tangled and wet, clinging to her face. She wore something old, faded fabric that looked soaked in mud. Kimi froze. Her brush slipped from her hand and hit the table with a dull thud. She turned. No one was there. The room was empty. But the smell hit her, earthy, wet, like a grave that had just been disturbed. The scent clung to the air, thick and damp. Kimi never used that mirror again. One morning, Kimi went to brush her teeth. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Just for a second, the woman's face appeared behind hers. Kimi screamed. When Bola came running, Kimi was curled up in the corner of the bathroom, crying. "I want to leave," she said. "I want to go back to our old house." Bola held her close. Her heart was heavy. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew it wasn't over. Something was in the house, and it was starting with her children. Bola had tried to stay calm for weeks. She told herself that she was imagining things, that the cold air, the strange sounds, the whispers at night, they were just part of adjusting to a new home. But now, Kimi was seeing things too. The same woman, again and again. And Tolu, once loud and confident, was quiet and scared. She didn't want to sleep in the dark anymore. She kept checking her walls for scratch marks. Even Anu, the oldest, had started to act differently. She was moody and always nervous. She kept her headphones on all the time, but sometimes she pulled them off and looked around like she had heard someone whispering her name. Bola couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was wrong with the house, and she had to find out what it was. One morning, after everyone had left, Mr. Adeyemi to work, the girls to school, Bola stood at the bottom of the attic stairs. The door above her creaked slightly in the wind. She had never gone up there before. It smelled of dust, wood, and something old, like forgotten clothes and closed-up memories. Slowly, she climbed the steps. Each one creaked loudly under her feet. When she reached the top, she pushed open the attic door. Inside was a dark, quiet space filled with cobwebs, broken furniture, boxes, and trunks. Sunlight came in through a small round window, cutting across the dust floating in the air. Bola stepped carefully around old chairs and shelves. The floor groaned. She walked toward a large wooden chest sitting in a corner. It was covered with a cloth. She pulled the cloth off slowly, coughing as the dust rose. The chest was locked, but beside it on the floor, hidden under a pile of books, she found a key. It fit. She opened the chest. Inside were old clothes, yellowed papers, and a leather-bound journal. She picked it up and sat down on an old trunk. On the first page, in faded ink, was a name. Olumide Adebayo, 1913. Bola began to read. At first, the writing was normal. Olumide wrote about building the house with his wife. He wrote about how proud he was to own land in Lagos. He loved the garden, especially the fig tree in the back. Then the writing changed. The sentences became messy, rushed. He wrote about shadows in the corners of rooms, cold air, and strange dreams. I hear her at night. She whispers to me. She is angry. She says I lied to her. Ifeoma will not leave. I see her in mirrors, in water, even in my sleep. Bola's fingers trembled as she turned the pages. One entry stopped her heart. I tried the ritual. I thought I could trap her, bind her to the house. But she is too strong. She knows my fear. She will not rest. I fear I have doomed us all. Just as Bola read those words, the attic window slammed shut behind her. Bang! She jumped and dropped the journal. Her heart pounded. She ran down the stairs, journal in hand, slamming the attic door shut behind her. She didn't know who Ifeoma was, but she knew this. Whatever had happened in that house long ago had never ended. And now, it was happening again. That night, the family sat together in the living room. The journal lay open on the table, its pages filled with strange words and dark stories. Bola read the passages aloud, her voice shaking a little. Mr. Adeyemi tried to keep calm. It's just an old house, he said, forcing a smile. Old houses make noises. And stories like these, they're just stories. But even he sounded unsure. The children sat close to their parents. Kimi clung to Bola's arm. Tolu's eyes were wide with fear. Suddenly, The lights flickered. The television, which had been off, turned on by itself. Static filled the screen. The air grew cold and sharp, like a blade cutting through warm air. Bobo, their dog, barked loudly at the darkest corner of the room. Then, from the shadows, a tall figure appeared. It was pale and thin, with glowing red eyes that shone like fire. The family froze. They heard chanting. It was soft but growing louder, voices whispering words they couldn't understand. Kimi screamed as something grabbed her leg. She tried to pull away, but the hand was cold and strong. The wooden floor beneath her cracked and split open. Mr. Adeyemi grabbed her just in time and pulled her back. The dark hole closed as suddenly as it had opened. The figure in the shadows faded, leaving the room silent and cold. Everyone's hearts raced. They knew now. The house was not just old. It was haunted. And whatever lived here was angry and dangerous. The next morning, Mr. Adeyemi did not go to work. Instead, he called Baba Ayo, a wise elder and spiritual healer from the village. Baba Ayo was known for his knowledge of spirits and his powerful prayers. He carried a wooden staff carved with symbols and a bag full of herbs. By midday, Baba Ayo arrived at the house on Ajose Street. He looked around quietly, his eyes sharp and calm. "This house is cursed," he said softly, his voice strong. "A woman's spirit is trapped here. Her name was Ifeoma." The family listened closely as Baba Ayo explained. Ifeoma had been a powerful woman, but she was betrayed long ago. Her spirit did not leave. Instead, it stayed, angry and full of pain. Baba Ayo opened his bag and began to prepare his tools. He mixed herbs in a small bowl, lit candles, and arranged sacred objects around the living room. "Tonight," he said, "we will do a ritual to speak to Ifeoma's spirit and ask her to find peace." The family helped as best they could. Bola held a small bottle of holy water. The girls scattered dried leaves from the garden. Mr. Adeyemi watched, holding his wife's hand tightly. As the sun set, Baba Ayo began to chant prayers in a low, steady voice. The wind outside howled. The house seemed to breathe. Suddenly, the room grew colder. A shadow appeared. It was Ifeoma. Her face was pale and wet with tears. She reached toward Kimi, her eyes full of pain and anger. But Baba Ayo raised his staff and shouted a prayer. Light shot out from the herbs and bones Baba Ayo had found buried under the old fig tree in the garden. "Ifeoma," Baba Ayo said, "you are seen. You are heard. You are free." The spirit looked at Kimi one last time. Then, in a flash of golden light, Ifeoma disappeared. The fig tree cracked and split open as the house seemed to let out a long sigh. The family stood silently, feeling the heavy darkness lift. For the first time in weeks, the house felt warm. The house on Ajose Street was different now. The heavy feeling of sadness and fear had lifted. The air was warm and still. Sunlight poured through the windows without shadows lurking in the corners.